my name is Jane Morgan. I'm a school committee member in Arlington. I am recording this video to try and help folks understand the reality in places like Arlington where we've seen extraordinary growth in home values, and yet our property tax base and thus the money that we have available to spend for services remains really constrained due to a state law in Massachusetts called Proposition 2.5. So what I have here is a very simplistic rendition of a Massachusetts town. In my town, there are 10 houses. Each house is worth $10,000, and each house is taxed at a $10 per $1,000 value rate, which is pretty similar to what we use in Arlington. Our tax rate is about $11.21 per $1,000 in value. So based on that calculation, each house in this fictitious town pays $100 in property taxes annually in year one. So the town can levy $1,000 in real estate revenue in year one, and then they can use that to spend it on town services, right? So in year two, so because of this state law, the amount of the levy, the amount that can be collected, can only be increased by 2.5% each year. So in year two in this town, right, we have 10 houses, they're all still worth the same amount, right? So this town has not seen the kind of real estate boom that we've seen in Arlington over the last, 8-9 years. They can levy 2.5% more over what was paid in year one. So they can collect $1,025 in tax, and every house is worth the same in this town. So everybody is going to pay $102.50 in property taxes. So that's sort of one scenario, right, where we're not seeing increases in home values, and that's what that's how much the levy can change. So let's say here is a situation that's maybe more similar to what we've seen here, right? So in year one, the house is, same scenario. They're all worth $10,000. They can collect $1,000 in real estate revenue. Here, we've seen in year two, the houses are all now worth double what they were before, right? But the issue with 2.5 is that it only applies to the amount that you collected in the previous year. It's not based on the valuation of the homes in the town, right? So it'll impact the tax rate. The rate at which people are taxed will be impacted in year two, but the amount the town can collect and can spend on services increases by the same amount as it does in the previous scenario, right? So this means that if the cost of the services that the town provides raises or increases at more than 2.5% annually, right, the town has two options. They can either eliminate or reduce services. So they could reduce spending on schools, they could reduce trash and recycling collection, they could limit street repairs, there could be fewer snow plows, right? So you could have fewer police officers, all kinds of things, right? You could decide that you were going to reduce services, or alternately, the town can go to the voters and ask for an operational tax override, which basically means that you would ask the voters for permission to levy tax beyond the 2.5% increases. So the way this works is they typically approve it. Well, the voters would approve or vote on a dollar amount to be levied annually. So an additional dollar amount that the town would be authorized to levy, and then it would be distributed amongst the real estate parcels, right? So in 2019, voters approved a $5.5 million override, and at that time, the commitment was not to come back for 4 years. In 2011, voters approved a $6.5 million override with a commitment to not come back for 3 years. So the situation where we're at in Arlington right now or that we last did an operational override in 2019. The commitment was to not come back for 4 years. It was done in the spring of 2019. It's now 4 years later. And we're facing significant fiscal deficits in fiscal year 26, 27, and beyond. So the conversation is ongoing and sort of coalescing around a desire to do an operational override, likely this fall, which would put a question to the voters of, a certain dollar amount extra to be levied. And I think it's important as we go into that to understand why, even though our houses are worth a lot more than they were, 5 years ago or certainly 10 years ago, why the amount that the town has to spend on services hasn't increased at the same rate. And that's because of Proposition 2.5 and the constraints on municipalities in terms of what they can levy.